We're back. Wow. Thank you for being here, everybody. And you hear me. Look at that American flag. Wow. That's really living up to it these days. Oh, Jim's got me covered. MJ, thank you guys. Hey, it's the White House where that guy lives. The Brown House. You know what I mean? Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the Cliff's Edge, as we like to call it, live stream. Glad to be back this Wednesday. I miss this. I really do. I don't miss everything else. If you read a Substack of mine, which I'm going to use for the basis of a rant today, we'll get to that. But I don't miss everything else about this glorious country of ours. But I had a great 10 days in Sicily and Rome. There's some family from Sicily. So don't mess with me if you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about? It's on the wife's side, so I can't even push that. But I love it over there. I love it, and it helps bring out perspective. So I'm going to give you some of that perspective. I wrote about it. Is this really Cliff or just a replica from Grumpy Cat? Very nice. It is not a replica. I know while I was there, I screwed up and tried to like replay a live stream and it didn't actually happen. Like nothing happened. I don't know if that was me or the fact that I think it was the Wi-Fi was screwed up. So I don't think that one was on me, but, and I was gone last week. I know, but I have to take vacations here and there, folks, or I'll lose my freaking mind. I think you know what I'm talking about, which is a great segue, by the way. I see Cynthia Rice's family. She's from Sicily on her mom's side. Cynthia, when I am done with this rant, you're going to have to tell me where in Sicily, and we're going to have to do some talking. But that was a good segue in terms of vacation because, hey, in Sicily, you know what? When they in Italy, let's talk about the whole country. You get 4 weeks, 20 days of vacation when you start a job. And the reason for that is, and as I talked about in this Substack I wrote on our somber lives here in America, how the right killed happiness, is because of the fact that both personally, they have convinced us through disinformation, through 50 to 70 years of psyops warfare, to believe that everything that is good is about making money, is about consuming, and is about work. And then on the political side, they convinced us of, it all interacts, right? That same conservative mindset has led us to elect people like George W. Bush and Trump, obviously now, who's trying to end our democracy. And worst of all, not worst of all, Trump's worst of all, but worst of all in terms of when we made that change and who we were, was Reagan. Okay. Now, going up through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were similar to Western Europe. You won't believe this now, I know, because if you're not, you kids out there, I was too young really to know about it too. Sadly, my first memories are mostly during Reagan, and he was already changing our culture to a much worse individualist, consumerist, selfish, my right to do whatever the hell I want, get taxes off of me. And then what you do is you get actually, how the right always pisses off. I think they're now the Wachowski sisters, who are the Wachowski brothers, who made The Matrix, where they always use a little red pilled thing. Yeah, well, they're the ones who are living in and it's weird because blue pill land. If you use it the way the Wachowskis did, and you get red pilled, is when you realize how fucked we are here in America. Over there, I can't explain to you. You get there, first of all, there's a palpable ease in the air. People are friendly. They're happy. They're taking siesta during the day. Why? Because they may have gone out the night before and tied one on with some friends, because you can do that. Remember, like hanging out with friends during the week? Yeah. You can do that over there and drink and have fun. They've got disposable income, even if they make middling incomes. Why? Because you don't sit there and say, oh my God, I might go into debt if I have an injury. I slipped down those stairs. I had a member of my family fall downstairs. I know that'll shock you with my technological expertise here as it is. This is one of the last times we went. We went to a hospital. There was an ankle twisted, and the doctors spent more time arguing about whether they could figure out how to charge American insurance and whether they should bother than actually even treating the patient who was treated immediately. And then once she was treated, they're like, nah, we're just not going to charge you. Didn't charge us anything. Like it's hard to really explain to people what it feels like, the lack of stress when there's no such thing as medical debt, because of course there's not in any other Western European country or Australia or Canada or Japan or really any first world democracy. Okay, there's no such thing as, oh my god, how am I going to send my kids to college? So like the minute you reach puberty, you're basically stuffing all of your money away, because that's what you got to do, because 25 years down the line a child may want to go to college, or 40 years down the line you better start saving now, kids, especially while Trump's in charge of the stock market. Not really in charge, but you get what I mean. Trump tariffs, yay. So yeah, you have to do that. I told you about the 20 days off from the beginning. You get 10 months off right away for maternity or paternity leave. We spoke to a good friend of ours there, and she is a high powered lawyer. She would get paid up to, like, I think 20% of her salary for up to the first 12 years her kids were alive. That's right. Like, she'd work a lot less and she'd get paid a lot less, but they would still support her, because the difference is they didn't give up on life. They understand that living is a thing, leisure time is a thing, right? Not having guys show up in fucking masks and grab people off the streets or farms and throw them into a truck is not a thing there. And they've got Giorgia Meloni in office, who's probably the most right wing person they've had as prime minister, maybe since Mussolini. But she has said quite clearly she's against abortion, she's against gay marriage, but she's not going to touch either of those things. Why? She's smart enough to know the vast majority of her population's for it, and they don't have these little sort of tricks like we have here, like gerrymandering in an electoral college and Senate, 2 Senate seats for the 4 cows that live in Wyoming and crap like that, so they can keep winning based on minority issues that like 25% of the people support. So she's come out quite clearly and said she will respect the constitutional republic. She believes her positions are ones that the majority accepts. She's wrong, but they will do things through the means that you do them in a democracy. She also, by the way, talking about conservative parties that actually still represent regular people and don't just stick their heads up billionaires' asses. She saw that there was a sort of debate over the fact that freelancers, people like me, like we would call entrepreneurs, freelancers, were paying the same tax rate, 43%, as everyone else. But they weren't getting some of the same benefits that you get from your workplace, because I haven't even come close. Family, medical leave, sick leave, you get right away. You get a ton of vacation days. I mean, my God, the list goes on and on. They actually treat workers like workers. Again, like we used to here, treat them well. So she decided that was unfair. So their government, imagine doing this for a lot of people that make less money. It was up to 85,000 euro you could make to be part of this. They lowered the tax rate from 43% to 15%. I want you to imagine Trump, Bush, Reagan, any one of these ignoramus, freaking pot-bellied jerk. I don't want to go into a bunch of cursing, so I'll just say imbecilic, supply-side dumbass. I just did it. Republicans trying to actually help people making less than $85,000 a year. Can you imagine that? You can't, because they don't. They lie about it a lot. They're great at lying and pretending they care about regular people. So that's what happened. And the key to knowing all of this is, if you study history, and I do, you know that during the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s, Pinochet, we went after Fidel Castro, Guatemala, the fruit company there, Angola, Iran, that hasn't blown back at all. We replaced governments. We used disinformation, mass warfare of information and propaganda to convince populations to sort of those cleaves between them, to increase the divides, split people up, and help those, the ones that we wanted in power, win, who often sucked and were corrupt and frankly every bit as bad. Sometimes the democratically elected governments are actually far better. Sometimes they were Stalinists and they sucked. Doesn't mean we should be getting involved in that when both sides are awful. But the point is you see it in our polling, how all of our views changed. And that's why I get so angry at mainstream media. And when people sort of try to pretend, Republicans are just better at this or that or whatever. I mean, the Democrats are too weak. That's true and whatever. But mainstream media doesn't tell people the truth. And the right lies constantly. And they've built an ever bigger propaganda machine. Remember, there are some key years in there I always like to point out. I think it was 73, Heritage Foundation, ALEC, a bunch of other right-wing organizations were created. And they hacked America. They knew that a lot of working class voters that supported Democrats were they could appeal to ancient racisms, and even those that had sort of gotten past that, they could go lie to them about what was going on and separate them. And that was a Southern strategy and other things. But if you don't think there was some, some, let's call it former military members, the way Mike Flynn's doing what he's doing now, just know that William F. Buckley was a former CIA agent who worked under E. Howard Hunt, and the CIA, who was part of Watergate for Nixon. Hate to get too conspiratorial here or truthful. Know that the CIA originally put some funding into the American Spectator magazine. God knows what they did from there on. We don't have all of it, but I promise you, they get backing again and again because they knew what worked in other countries to stop liberalism, to stop leftism from moving forward. And they did it to us. We could have that life. We could have the vacation time and enjoy each other's presence and not have, a fascist turd in office right now with that fecal colored tanning spray he has on his face. We could have that. But both politically and personally, we have been brainwashed. I mean, I mentioned in the piece that I wrote in Substack, and again, blueamp.co, that is blueamp.co to go subscribe to the Substack. Also, Cliffs_Edge to subscribe to YouTube. Please do that too. But I wrote in there about people when I graduated from college, and I graduated from college with a very sort of, a business school was a big part of it. And like everyone was bragging not about what they'd create, what they would do, what they would accomplish. It was like, here's how much money I'll make, especially like the investment banker Wall Street types. Dude, I work 90 hours a week. How many hours do you work, man? I work 95. Oh my God. Like, should I just start reciting the greed is good speech right now? Like, this is how they define themselves. And I just can't tell you what it's like to go someplace where you sit and have a cup of coffee and just look at people and relax and talk about things and see your friends and enjoy your family and don't worry about medical debt. Don't worry about some, ridiculous Jabberwocky-ish lummox sitting on the White House having a fit and pooping his pants and deciding he's going to put 127% tariffs on Brazil. You don't worry you're going to get sick and you might miss too much work and they'll fire you. These things don't exist and they go hand in hand. And I may be talking about Italy now, but I lived in the south of France. It is the same in France. I've spent time in Spain, same. Greece, Spain, same. Sweden, same. Belgium, same. Japan, same. Canada, same. Australia, same. New Zealand, same. You can go on and on and on. South Korea, same. I mean, it's ridiculous. We are abnormal. Okay? We do not live normal lives. This is not how people are supposed to live. They're not supposed to be stressed, depressed, anxious, scared all the time, worried about that next bill coming in. This is not how it's supposed to be. It's not how it was, even though we suffered from racism and sexism and all that, when we truly were a country that economically supported the working and middle class from the 1930s to the 1980s until the right wingers were able to hack our culture and change all of that. And that, as much as getting rid of Trump, has to be what we get back to. Otherwise, this country, you'll never understand why you're bothering here if you spend some time abroad. I spent a lot of time abroad, but the thing that really struck me this time is under Trump and the cruelty of the Republican Party that's gotten even so much worse the last few years, how much worse it's even gotten. I mean, we are ridiculous. And if we don't fight this fight, if we don't win, I've asked you all to support us to please get a paid subscription to our Substack. We are 23 away from 1,000. We'll get a nicer check and they will promote our work that much more. We have a sound check fund with up to $10,000, that's been put into it to support smaller creators. We are going to try to be part of the solution here. But if we don't all solve this together, I got a kid with a couple more years in high school, and got to tell y'all, I'll be living in San Marco on a mountain in Sicily in 4 or 5 years, or I'll be living in Villefranche-sur-Mer, right next to Nice, overlooking the water. They filmed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels there if you need to understand how beautiful it is. But this is no way to live. And I was reminded of that once again. We can do better. We must do better, or we should all just get the hell out of here if you can. That has been Cliff's note. This will be David Schuster. You may have more to add.
Well, first, I want to say, Cliff, welcome back. We missed you. I am glad that you had a great time, and it was clearly very thought-provoking, to be over there, and you're a deep thinker, and it's so great that you were able to share a lot of what you were thinking on that Substack. I caught some of what you heard, and we had talked about some of this offline. The other thing that dawns on me, Cliff, is never mind, life just generally being better and more enriching, and relationships, and having time, and not being stressed about medical health stuff or college. If you look at infrastructure, as you have in many of these European cities, their infrastructure is better than ours.
Oh my
Their
God, yes.
train stations, their highways, it goes on, their bridges, their tunnels. And it wasn't always that way. I mean, in the 1950s, at the heart of this sort of growth of the middle class, there was, Eisenhower created the interstate highway system, and it was the model of the world. But if you were to go back, if you were to ask people, who were in World War II, who won the war, and you brought them and you introduced them to what these countries look like now, both personally and also in terms of infrastructure, they would say, of course, Germany and Japan won.
That might be a
Not even
topic
close.
for a video in the future, by the way, David. Go ahead.
No, I was to say, I mean, you just, I think our grandfathers, great grandfathers, people who fought in World War II would be shocked if they looked around at the status of the United States right now, both in terms of infrastructure, quality of life, anxiety, compared to infrastructure, quality of life in Germany, Japan, Italy, Spain. It goes on and on and on.
Yep.
So it's shocking, and it's disturbing on so many levels.
Yeah, I mean, everyone would have their favorite places, right? I don't expect everybody.
Yeah.
That's why I want to broaden it. For some folks, it might be like, hey, you know, um, I want to go spend time in Denmark. Some people it might be like, hey, I want to go spend time in Austria, but in the end, not one of these places lacks national health care. Not one.
Right.
They have different models for how they get there. Germany kind of has more like a public option, like what we
Hmm.
had talked about here. And thank you, by the way, for scuttling that, Joe Lieberman. May you not rest in peace. Sorry, that was mean of me, but I don't really care. Because a lot of other people, by the way, have lost their lives because of what Lieberman did there. So, in any case, he's the one who was the final vote against a public option. And Germany, I think Belgium too, they've got that system where it's not single payer healthcare, but the government provides you this terrific service. And guess what? The private guys have to compete with it. Suddenly, you're not paying your CEO $100 million. You're not wasting money on, hey, let's all go to Hawaii on an excursion, and then charging people for that. Because if you charge too much, nobody will use your product. They'll all use the government one. So however you get there, the point is they've all gotten there. I mentioned Italy. I don't know the other countries, but a lot of them are similar. I mean, you can go to a public university, and we've had these talks. I've got a kid going to college next year, David. We've talked about your kids going to school. I've got another one going in a couple of years. Imagine the high end, the very high end, and there's only a few of the schools in Italy being €4,000, which comes out to, as I put in the article at that time, exchange rates changed a little bit, $4,665. Imagine that being the top you would pay for a year at a terrific college. And all the other stuff. And again, that is intricately tied into our political culture. They are, because it can't, if you have that mindset of work all the time, make the most money, then you want taxes the lowest because you don't see that what taxes do for you, what they provide as they do in all these countries. You've forgotten, as you said, about infrastructure. Like, it shouldn't have taken this incredible bill, and it was one by Joe Biden, for us to build up all these areas of our infrastructure. And if you noticed, most of them weren't creating anything new. We were repairing all the crap we'd ignored. We had two bridges that they had declared, who the engineers, the whatever of engineers, I can't think of the name, structurally unsound, between Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. Like, you're taking your life into your own hands. A big chunk of one of them fell off. And while this was going on, while John Boehner in Southwest Ohio here was Speaker of the House, and Mitch McConnell was leader in the Senate in Kentucky, and they wouldn't do a damn thing about it. Right. And it took Joe Biden. I mean, we've just ignored, like, we used to, I don't want to steal that speech from, but everybody should watch it sometimes. Was it Newsnight? He gives in the beginning, the famous speech where he's the news guy, Jeff Daniels, where he's like,
Yeah.
America isn't the greatest country in the world anymore.
Yeah,
And he goes to, we're 38th in infant mortality. All of these kinds of things. And, he's like, but at one point where he stops, he's like, we used to build things, like we built the Hoover Dam, we built stuff like that kind of infrastructure, and we just don't anymore,
Yeah,
unless
I
there's.
grew up, and you probably the
Go ahead.
same. I mean, as a child of, grew up in the 70s and 80s. I mean, I remember as a child hearing about American ingenuity because it
Yep.
was only what 10 years after, I think when I was in sixth or seventh grade, 10 years after the United States put a man on the moon. And the Apollo missions were remarkable in terms of what they had to overcome. And so American ingenuity was a thing. And I think what's so sad in many ways, to me at least, is that some of some of what Europe does well, I don't think is that much of a stretch from what we're doing now. And that, a lot of Americans have been brainwashed to think, oh my God, it's communism and socialism. Well, I think you mentioned health insurance, and I don't know whether it's Italy or France. One of them has this thing that's almost like universal health care plus. So you automatically go to the hospital and you get standard treatment and whatnot. But if you want the caviar, if you want the sweet, you can get it.
Yep.
But for that, you have to carry a little extra insurance and pay a little bit something extra.
Right.
So for
And I
people
know
who,
France does have that
yeah,
from when I lived there, and they have one of the cheapest. They spend so much less on us, and actually, it's usually ranked the best healthcare system in the world.
right. Yeah, and so I mean, there's an example of, okay, we could go to universal health care for people who still want to be able to pay their own money for extra care or luxuries. Okay, you can still have that option. We would be able to do that. But so many Americans, I think, don't understand that it's not that far a reach. And to your point about, Europe and the quality of life, and we were talking about this the other night, I find it so remarkable. People who have traveled, who've had the opportunity to go to these other countries, they get it. But I think most Americans, and maybe this is a tradition that we've had for 200 and some years, separated by oceans. Most Americans have never left North America. They
Right. Well,
don't.
and some can't afford it these days
I
because,
can't
of course,
afford it.
what
Yeah.
we've done so that they can't afford it.
Yeah, so they don't know what they don't know. I mean, Americans just assume that the entire globe lives to work. And when they're told, no, 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 in a lot of countries, people work to live, that's a concept that is just, it's a foreign concept to so many Americans. People are like, what? What do you mean
Right.
people have off the entire month of August? What do you mean people can get 6 months off when their child or is born? What do you mean they can get time off to take care of an aging relative? What do you mean they may get, 3-day weekends throughout the entire? I mean, people, their minds are blown.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I have a good friend who's French, and funny enough, he went to Ohio State right here in Ohio. He's from Baltimore originally, and has lived in France now. He went over there working with a software company, and of course, once you go and you live there, you pretty much can't come back here
yeah,
because it's too good. And he's been there now probably 25 years, or I don't know what it is. We saw him when we went last time I went and visited where I studied in the south of France, and I mean, he gets all of August off. He's in Paris, gets all of August off, can go down to the south of France and afford a place and enjoy themselves, right? And we just, we don't think about any of this stuff. We don't hold our leaders to account. I mean, it goes so beyond just Trumpism, and that really
yeah.
was what I was trying to get at.
And that piece about accountability, I mean, I shouldn't diminish, most Americans by saying, oh, they don't know better, they don't travel, because now that I think about it, if you go back to some of the polling, some of the proposals that, Bernie Sanders had, and then even
Mhm.
Hillary Clinton embraced some of them as well. The idea of a tax on Wall Street, taxing the rich, expanding healthcare to include everybody. In Bernie Sanders' case, free college tuition,
Yep.
raising the minimum wage, closing the wealth gap, giving people more leave when they need to take care of a family member or the birth of a child. All of those poll well above 60%. Some of them,
Most well above 70 and some into the
some
80s.
of them
Yep.
are in the 60 percentile with Republicans.
Yep.
So then the question is, okay, if most Americans support all of this, and most Americans do want to move towards this sort of quality of life, well, what's keeping us back? Well, what's keeping us back is that we have a corrupt political system where we have lawmakers in both parties who are bought and paid for by special interests. And those special interests have a vested financial interest in not moving forward with some of these
Right.
reforms and progressive values. And so
Right.
that's where we get a logjam.
And a lot of them are actually progressive while being conservative at the same time. And
Yeah.
let me explain, if you will, so I don't sound like I'm a crazy person. But the traditional definition of conservative, right? Hey, I'm a fiscal conservative. Well, if you were a fiscal conservative, then you'd look at the math, you'd look at the charts, and you'd see preventative health care will save you money every single damn time. If you make somebody not go see a doctor and wait, till they get to the point where whatever illness they have is in dire straits and they end up in an emergency room. Guess what? We don't leave them on the sidewalk. I remember Ron Paul said in his debate, he was the only one with the crazy enough guts to say that we should, which I guess then that would be a hell of a country then. But the rest of them couldn't even get themselves to say. So, okay, in one way, at least Ron Paul is saying we should be a sick society and we should be consistent. But the other is, if we take care of people in the emergency room as we should again much sooner, then it always inevitably costs us much more. So you get a more expensive healthcare system, a more inefficient healthcare system that ain't conservative. You get people who much more often die or end up getting chronic illnesses because of it. That's certainly not liberal or progressive. The only people that gain from that are billionaires and health insurance companies, CEOs, and those kinds of. They're the only ones. And you've heard some of it. You brought up Bernie and Hillary. I mean, AOC, like when she proposed the 70% tax on anything over 10 million, I was like, yeah. I mean, and people don't get, they're like, oh, well, you're going to tax every dollar I make. No, every dollar from $10 million on, that's under Eisenhower when we were building the highways, a Republican, that was a 91% tax rate that we had on those folks. Yeah. If you're making over $10 million a year, I'm sorry, you've benefited from the security, from the investment, from everything else in America. Yeah, you can pay 70% on every dollar above that. Or Elizabeth Warren, who talked about if you have above $50 million or 2%, was it? Wealth tax and everything above that. I mean, Jesus Christ, what are we talking about here if you're a billionaire? I mean, I know you need $46 million to spend on your San Majorio, island renting with Jeff Bezos and, the cyborg Laura Sanchez, who needs probably new body parts refilled already. I know we need to give them more money for that. Which, by the way, did you see that in the big, beautiful bill, there literally is a either I call it a wedding gift or a bribe, where they now allow if you're within like a certain distance of spaceports, like the way airports can now issue bonds. Well, they put something in there where if you're within a certain distance of spaceports, you can issue bonds. Gee, who owns those? It's just Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. That's it. I
Well,
mean,
and look, I mean, you're talking about the economic argument for investing on the front end so you don't have to pay on the back end. And we've seen that just in the last couple of months in terms of the conservative Donald Trump, Elon Musk approach to government. I mean, their whole argument was, well, we need to save the government money. We need to make government more efficient. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to fire a bunch of people at all these different government agencies. And surprise, surprise, when you fire a lot of people at the VA, or the National Institutes of Health, or all these different government agencies, you actually make government less efficient,
yep.
and it costs the American people more. And so now we just saw how that played out in Texas, right? By Kristi Noem deciding, well, I'm going to keep better track of every dollar that's spent by FEMA. So now every time somebody wants to spend more than $100,000, I have to give personal approval. So the urban search and rescue teams, who were ready to go on that Friday, ready to go to Texas, they didn't get approved until 3 days later, Monday. By that point, a lot of people who might have been rescued, who might have been kept alive, in other words, being able to contribute to our economy in the future, they were dead.
Yes.
Likewise, when Kristi Noem and the Department of Federal Emergency Management Agency got rid of a lot of these call centers and decided to have fewer people answering calls, well, then as a result, for the first couple of days, only something like 15% of all the calls that went to the FEMA distress lines were actually picked up. So, yeah, you might have saved some money by having fewer contractors answering the phones, but you actually cost all of us a lot more money because now all of those people who might have contributed to our economy by building things, by being part of our economy in the future, are not there because they're dead. And that comes with and putting aside the moral argument, if you're only going to argue this based on economics, just based on economics and not on morality, you still come down on the side of investing on the front end so you don't pay for it on the back end.
Right. It cost you more money in the end to do everything that you had to do because you didn't invest on the front end. And oh, by the way, the productivity of the people you let die, which is what you did, Greg Abbott, and what you did, Kristi Noem, and what you did, whatever your dumb name is. I can't think of the person who's the one right underneath who's saying all these stupid things. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I mean, that's what you did. You let people die. There are a bunch of them were campers from some wealthy families around the country. And it doesn't mean I don't feel bad. I feel bad for anybody. I don't know their politics who loses kids. But I do wonder, at what point when because we've seen the poor MAGA folks suffer and they don't give a damn about them. But at what point do the wealthy donors realize that they can be victims of this crap too?
Mm.
That it can destroy their families, that it can destroy their lives. Do they have the self-realization to get that? Because there are some pretty big named people in the business world whose daughters were lost in Texas. That was a pretty ritzy camp they were at. And I mean, again, I don't want that to happen to anybody, but it makes you. But like, how is it you didn't realize? Do you think you're Superman? I know you don't. Superman's woke these days. Woo, we don't want that. But I mean, do you think you're not human? Do you think if you're on a plane where there's not enough? By the way, we got stuck in Kennedy the other day on the way home and went through this whole thing. Eventually it became about weather, but initially, guess what? It wasn't. They didn't have enough staff at JFK. I wonder why that was. Wonder why they didn't have enough staff there. I think I could figure that out. I
Well,
mean,
good thing you weren't going through Newark because there's no not enough
we made
control
sure
on
of
a
that.
regular basis. I mean, Newark's even worse.
I
Shouldn't
mean, that's
laugh
it. We
about it,
made sure of
but
that. But I mean, this is what they're doing. They're hollowing
yeah,
us out.
yeah,
Ruth Ben Ghiat said that when we did our Substack live with her. We did Amped Up. She said this is what dictators do, right? I mean, you're of no use to them. They don't care about people, so you're of no use to them unless you're a yes man or woman there who's helping them out. So anybody who has institutional knowledge, and I wrote a Substack on this way back too about when they started going after these government workers. I'm like, you sons of bitches, you guys. Again, that's where it comes back to this argument I made about Italy. All these people care about is money and glamour and all this garbage, all this sort of superficial crap. Whereas these folks who decide to go work in their area of expertise because they may be a brilliant geologist, or they may be, brilliant physicist, or they may be brilliant when it comes to understanding healthcare outcomes, or when it comes to labor practices. So they go work at one of these government departments. They make less money than they could in the private sector, and they do it because they're passionate about it, because they want to actually help. And so when you fire them, we lose all of that institutional knowledge. I mean, hopefully once we get rid of this asshole as president, like refilling those positions. I mean, who knows what that's going to take.
yeah.
It's just so angering because we've just been so like it's like the wool's been pulled over our eyes, and it feels like it was so easy for them to do it, and we've had some periods where the American public at least was sort of inculcated enough in democratic practices that we fought back, and we elected Obama, and we elected Clinton, and we elected Biden, and democratic senates and houses. I mean, we didn't just fall easily into a dictatorship. But it's gotten a little worse all the time, even when Democrats have made it somewhat better while they've been in office. And the problem, of course, is the Democrats have defended institutions instead of defending democracy while they've been there, and realized that institutions are not working because Republicans have assaulted them. But that's it, right? It's Republicans bought by billionaires. And yeah, you said it's bipartisan. Look, I'll be the first to admit there are a number of corrupt Democrats. But the difference is there's only one party where I would still say the majority of its elected officials actually care about helping people.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
there may be a 20 or 30% contingent of corrupt Democrats, whereas it's somewhere at this point about 98% of Republicans. Maybe the last one who I thought wasn't was Lisa Murkowski, and now that's gone. I mean,
Yeah.
find one in there. I dare anybody.
No, I'm with you on that. And the other thing that I've been thinking about, Cliff, as I've listening to you and then looking at the news and from Texas the last couple of weeks, and sort of the overall status of sort of the country, is I was asking you. This was probably a couple of videos ago, a couple of live streams ago. How did Democrats message this? And you came up with this sort of the brilliant sort of trifecta that you described, that Donald Trump and the Republicans are criminal, cruel, and incompetent.
Yep.
And as you look at things from the last couple of weeks, everything fits under that. Texas, incompetent. Criminal, what's happening with ICE. Cruel, the disregard for basic humanity, basic due process. I mean, it fits there. And I think to the extent that Democrats and Republicans who hate the direction of the GOP can say, well, look, yeah, it all fits into something that simple. And everything falls under that. It becomes a lot easier for people to understand.
Well, maybe we should ask some of the commenters here if they think that could work, because you know what? I kind of feel like we should just start repeating it and make everybody repeat it, right? I mean, criminal, corrupt, and incompetent.
Yeah.
Okay. See, there's four of them actually, so that's why like I interchange criminal and corrupt sometimes, and but criminal, cruel, and incompetent. Criminal, cruel, and incompetent. Just say it, and because again, if you put together a narrative that defines the other side. Then later, when they do things that inevitably fit in one of those, or usually more than one of those categories, people are like, oh, that's right. What they were saying was true. They are criminal. They are incompetent. They are, and it helps it very easily sort of wrap it up for what they are. And this is what they are. Like, I'm not even trying to simplify it. That's what they are. In Texas, in the FEMA stuff in North Carolina, I mean, we see it, the destruction of wealth with these tariffs. I mean, we just see it again and again and again. And it doesn't matter if, what percent of it is criminality and what percent of it is incompetence, whatever. It's all like a mixture of this, and they're destroying, and what we have, and we already we're way behind, in terms of our quality of life, countries like Italy and France and Spain and places like that. And we're just getting worse.
Yeah,
Like,
and I would add that even something like owning the libs sort of falls under the incompetence tag, because one of the stories that's emerged from Texas is that some of the local communities, or at least the state legislators, they had an opportunity to get federal grant money if the state would kick up some of the money to match it, so that they could have these early warning systems and not rely
right.
on antiquated. But because this was during the Biden administration, at one point, they didn't want to take the FEMA money just because they wanted to own the libs. Oh, wait, we're Texas, we can handle it. Well, no, you couldn't handle it. And now a lot of people are dead who might have otherwise been alive if you had had these warning systems upgraded. So again, it's the incompetence of, they're so sometimes focused on, well, we can't do anything that Democrats want. That shows a level of incompetence that is mind blowing.
It really is. Here, I'm going to show you something. See if we can make this work. There you go. There's the owning the libs, folks. This thing went viral. And then, of course, she took it down after this.
Mm.
Well, you've got diabetic retinopathy. You know what? I don't. I still voted to help you. You voted to destroy yourself. Don't ask me to have compassion for you, because I don't. I'm going to have it for people that you destroyed with this stupid vote of yours. And I'm sorry if that makes me mean, then I'm mean. I don't really care. Good. Be in tears if you can manage it with your retinopathy. I don't care, because you just didn't think it was going to come back and hurt you. You thought it was only going to hurt other people. So that's why you voted for that. Well, guess what? Life's a bitch sometimes, isn't it? Again, like that mentality of, if I can just, if we could just hurt the libs, we can own the libs. If we can, like, maybe think about, how about helping your family?
Mm-hmm.
How about helping your country, helping your job situation, helping whatever? It's incredible to me. Like, as I was writing that thing, I was thinking about, yeah, Chris Rock once did this routine. I wish I could find it. I'm sure it wouldn't be it wouldn't be YouTube friendly, but I don't care. And he was like, he said some things that have pissed off people on the left. He generally leans left, but whatever. And he was just like, if you guys ever really truly knew how the rich live, people like me, he's like, you'd have a revolution tomorrow. You know what I mean? He's like, you have no idea. He's like, I go to the airport, you go to the airport. He's like, you're sitting there, you're stuck in some small seat with somebody smoking, or, ignoring the law around you, eating their Big Mac, waiting in line for 40 minutes, all this screaming and noise and, this and that. He's like, I go into my little diamond club, where they come to me dressed up and serve me whatever drink or food I like. I mean, he was being self-deprecating about it, and was sort of explaining that how people in this country just can't seem to get it.
Yeah.
That, this is billionaire and corporate CEO monopoly, we should say capture, of our government. Those are the only people, whether it's those health outcomes, whether it's debt. I mean, where is it? This stupid thing I got. I meant to save it. I tore it in half, and I'm like, oh, I should save it. First of all, guys, I don't know how your targeting is going, but I'm not a student. So, there's that. But, like, I don't know if you can say it. It's like, open immediately, student loan opportunity. Like, open immediately, student loan opportunity is what this thing I got in the mail here. I'm like, only in America. We're direct mailing people, marketing debt. It's what we're doing. Hey, do you need to be in more debt because we've decided that universities, I mean, I'm not going to go into the specifics of this, but I will tell you, I know of a case, and I mentioned it in that Substack, of a Democratic governor. So this does show it does happen on both sides, even if it's far worse on the Republican side, who, there was a state house minority leader, something like that, who was term limited out. And he's like, hey, well, at the state school, we'll just create a $350,000 a year job called, director of outreach. What this person did, I have zero idea. My guess is nothing. Just bided their time till another office opened up. But this is what our universities do. And guess what? People get hit with the tuition for that. Like there's been I don't remember what the percentage is, and I don't want to guess, but it's some ridiculous. It's like, in the hundreds or thousands of percents of executive position addition to universities with six-figure salaries that who knows what the hell they do. They become. I mean, we went and visited. I looked at a few. Like, there's a university in Rome, Sapienza, that is, it's like they're Oxford or Harvard or whatever. You'd be shocked. The
Mm.
buildings, plain. You know what I mean? The It's a nice campus. You've got green, you've got whatever. But like here, where they're like, that dorm was built 3 years ago. We need to build a new one. We need to raise the money for it. We need to put tuition into it. And magically, some folks who are either on the board of the university, who are real estate developers, or alums who give money, get the huge contract, and we've built this whole new big dorm. They don't do that there. That's why
Yeah.
they can afford to say your tuition is 500 to 4,000 euro. I mean, it's like our universities have become as corrupt as our government, as our media, as everything. Like it's all so corrupt and it's just overwhelming. I mean, you know,
Cliff, I got to ask you. I mean, you've spoken so eloquently about your sort of feelings and views as an American being in Europe, and your sort of thoughts back about the status of America now. I'm so curious though, because I've seen a lot of different accounts. What was it? What did you hear from Europeans about what they're seeing in America, or what their views are right now of America? I mean, did you feel open hostility? Did you feel contempt? Were people feeling sorry for you? What was that experience like?
all of those. I don't. There were some people who yelled things at us because they could tell we were American. My younger son's learning Italian, so he could pick up on some of them, but none of it. It's funny. We had a combination of people who spoke. Obviously, we all speak English, I think, and I speak French, and one of my older son speaks Spanish. It's like we had all the languages covered, but Italian. Like it's like but my younger son's learning Italian and knew some stuff. And yeah, we had some people that yelled out a few cases. In most cases, they didn't, and I, give them credit for that, for being decent people on that. But a few cases, people yelled outright hostilities. There absolutely was graffiti up on
Mm,
walls about Trump being a Nazi and America being awful and
mm,
stuff like that in Rome. Down in Sicily, the people we knew, I told you, one of the people we talked to who could stay with their kids till they were like 11 or 12, and only work part-time or whatever. These are people that, are a high powered family there, and probably are center left, center right, somewhere in the middle of the spectrum there, which by the way, would make you very liberal here.
yeah.
Like Macron, I've looked at his policies in France, everybody says is center right. And I'm like, I agree with a lot of that. Their spectrum is completely different than ours. They don't have anything like, like the hi, we're going to starve children in school. They don't have that. It doesn't exist. People that would cut snap like we just did. Um, but and they were like asking how could Trump get elected, and
Mm.
because he just met with Maloney, with the prime minister of Italy, and they were like, how do you think it went and whatever. I mean, he seems like he says some crazy things. We're like, yes, he does. And other folks, there are even a few that joked with us. We went to one restaurant. They're like, hey, American, Trump, right? You love Trump, like we love Trump. They actually said this, like, we love Trump. And I looked at them, I'm like, Biden. And they're like, we're just kidding with, like they were messing with me. They're just like, like they were screwing with me. I think if I'd said I supported Trump, then maybe they were pretending, and maybe they were nervous because maybe they think so many damn Americans do support Trump. But the minute like I said bye, they're like my best friends. They're like, hey, you want a shot? Like their arms are around me. I mean, you could feel that in the air too. Just that this sort of unease, only in that, hey, we were like the leaders of NATO, and
Mhm.
now they know we are not to be trusted. And that is worrying. And even their conservative governments, which again pointed out in that Substack piece, like Maloney is a no apologies, huge supporter of Ukraine. And she's on the relatively far right of their political system. So that should give you, for example, an idea, of what we're dealing with here. So yeah, I mean, you could feel it. There was levels of disappointment, there was levels of sort of shock, with anybody who we really spoke to. And there are others who just seemed to, excuse me, evince sympathy. Like
Mm,
they didn't really know what to say. I think they were thinking, well, we had Berlusconi, but even that jackass was not anything, I don't think, close to what Trump is, as bad as he was. And he was bad. He was more a TV showman idiot like Trump, too, who's right wing. Um, and so, yeah, you could feel a lot of that because, again, like we were an anchor of this system. You know what I mean?
mm,
We were a bulwark against people like Putin and Xi and others in the world that they often felt like that they could count on. And here we are, we're gone, and obviously numerous blows have come along the way. I mean, there's a bit there where it looked like Le Pen was going to win in France, and that scared them, a major country in Europe. There was a bit where it looked like the ADF could win in Germany, the biggest, I think, the second biggest economy. The biggest economy is no longer part of their trading system, because because of course Putin hacked Brexit too.
yeah.
I mean, they've gone through all of these sort of traumas of watching all of this, and but I mean us, my God, ever since World War II, it's like we were what they could count on. Kennedy, and Eisenhower, I mean, okay, Johnson not great in Vietnam, but I mean, obviously on social programs and getting and diplomacy, hell, even Nixon was a quite, I would call, a genius diplomat compared to Trump. And so I mean, a man who I could say a lot about his morality and his paranoia and need to win, and using the Southern strategy. But when it came to diplomacy, like he valued foreign policy and knew a lot about it. I actually came across a pretty prescient remark, and again, I'm sure this will be the part people will clip, like Cliff loves Nixon. Um, my son's in I think I told you before, a lead singer for a rock band, and sometimes just for irony, he gets up in a Nixon Agnew shirt just to see how people will react. Like he's liberal as hell, but it's like an ironic statement. But it was Nixon in the early '90s, predicting the Russia of today. It's crazy if you go back and watch it, saying, Russia has been one thing that's been a commonality from Russia throughout the ages, before the czars, with the czars, with the Soviet Union, has been they've been an imperial power whose pride has been based largely upon the land mass they've accumulated, and all of this has been a blow to them. Capitalism is something they've basically now. I mean, you had a 6 month period with Kerensky during the original March Revolution in Russia before they kicked him out and Lenin came in, and that's the only thing, even exposure to democracy, besides Yeltsin for that period of time. And you could claim up to maybe about 2008. And that Putin was working to undermine it that whole time. And he's, Nixon said in the early '90s, he said, one thing about them is, one thing that's going to happen is, it's been a government defined by extremism. You still have these old sort of Communist Party bosses, kind of like those Ba'ath guys, in Iraq, who are going to want power and position. And if you move to democracy too quickly, if you don't understand that this needs to be a transition, we
Mm,
need to prop up the public. Kind of like some of the anger that happened here when, sorry, I mean, this is a thing. I'm an Obama fan, but when some of these car companies got bailed out, we didn't bail out certain homeowners,
yeah.
right? Well, multiply that by a billion, honestly. So the people who had hated communism are suddenly thrust into the free market with no job prospects, no savings, nothing. And we did not, in any way, bolster these folks and say to them, this is how democracy can work. So they were radicalized.
Yeah.
First with that nut, I can't remember his name anymore. Ziranovsky, was it? I almost was going to say, I almost said
Fair enough.
Zelensky. I'm
Yeah.
mistaken. I'm like, oh crap. Ziranovsky, who was a fascist, and we were, like, what's his face was able to defeat him, Yeltsin, even during, drinking problems and other things like that. But then he ended up putting Putin as his bill, and I'm sure there's a lot of knifing in the back going on, figuratively and perhaps literally, to get that position behind Yeltsin, because they all knew he'd be gone. And the KGB guy snuck in there, and Yeltsin already was not of sound mind. And we didn't. We did not bolster democratic institutions there. We did not bolster a middle class. Hell, it would have been worth it. Look at what we did in Germany and Japan. It's what I always said, is that the Iraq War was stupid. We shouldn't have gone in. We didn't understand the culture. Hell, Bush didn't know the difference between Shia and Sunni. It was insane to do. But if you were going to go into Iraq and you really were going to change it, The only way that happens, and for anybody who doesn't get this, go rewatch Charlie Wilson's War, which has a great
Yeah.
lesson on this, is if we were willing to invest in their schools and in their moderate to liberal mosques and in their government to protect it and all the things you need to do to create a civil society. You need to be willing to be there for 30, 40, or 50 years. It's not a couple year commitment, and it's not a cheap commitment. This is what you had to do in Iraq and Afghanistan if you wanted that outcome. That is how Japan and Germany ended up becoming strong democracies. And it's the same thing here with Russia. And Russia was such an important part of the ball game because of being such a large landmass, because it had nukes, because of all of these reasons to get it right. And if we had invested the amount of money, if NATO had, if we had, whatever, to bolster their middle class, to provide, heating oil during the winter in parts of Russia where it's below zero, and provide food so there weren't bread lines, and do all of these kinds of things, maybe they could have come out of it a different way, but
Mm.
we didn't. And again, on Watergate, Nixon, no, but on that,
Yeah.
Nixon kind of that and the EPA, Nixon kind of knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so I don't
Nixon,
know.
correct me if I'm wrong, didn't at one point he consider universal health care?
He did. The greatest, again, that should let people know how far we've been brainwashed and how far our politics was to the left. That Nixon created the EPA, that
Mhm.
George H.W. Bush created what? That was the Clean Air Act, certainly the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Mhm.
That's where the Republican Party, even after Reagan, they still hadn't gotten rid of that entire part of their ethos, even as they're getting more right wing. And um, and Nixon had, I think he even actually came out for a guaranteed minimum income, by the way, which I think would
Right.
be called communist by some people today.
Yeah.
Um, but he wanted a healthcare plan that actually was going to look almost exactly like Obamacare. He wanted the market to be involved, an individual mandate, and insurance companies and that kind of thing. And the irony of ironies, which I guess we paid for in the end, Teddy Kennedy refused it, who at that point was a giant in the Senate, because he thought we could get something better.
Mm.
And so he held out. And God, I wish he had understood, Kennedy obviously did some great things in the Senate, but I wish he'd maybe understood that incrementalism, if you got people used to the idea of the government providing subsidies for healthcare, regulations to provide healthcare and other things, then you could go to a public option. Then maybe you go to single payer or a multi-payer system like Germany, where at least you have a base level of absolutely guaranteed amazing coverage. And then the others have to compete with that. Because if you have to compete with guys who aren't paying numerous executives up to like $1 billion a year combined, right? And aren't wasting money on all sorts of fun, little retreats and trips and paperwork, because who the hell cares? It's not my money. And all the other garbage, the administrative costs, somebody needs to have 14 assistants because they don't want to do any work, that kind of thing. Like if you don't waste on all that crap because you have to compete with a government program that doesn't do that, it's amazing how efficient you'll become.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nixon wanted universal health care. And
Mhm.
again, a lot of the time, because our culture was so different, because the right wing had only begun their program. They'd only been at it when Nixon was in office for 15 to 20 years, at creating things like the National Review and having their right wingers write for newspapers and trying to do their little psyop on us. We still were in the liberal consensus at that time, as it was called. And God, we should have grabbed everything. I mean, we did grab a lot of what we could have gotten, Medicare and Medicaid and these things that they're now attacking. But if we got universal health care, if we gotten family leave, all sorts of things back then, it's much harder, as we all know. They're doing it to a certain degree, right? They can damage things like Medicaid. They've had a very hard time, though, erasing them.
Yeah.
Fully taking away programs is very difficult to do once people get used to them. And the fact that they've damaged them as much as they have because they're in a cult and against their better judgment, all basically said, all right, this is what you want. Donald Trump will do it because Mike Johnson, that little squealy wimp, I mean,
Well, and even for Republicans who subscribe to the work requirement idea, there are ways you can put that in without it essentially hurting legitimate people who need Medicaid because, somebody's got cancer and they can't work, or they got somebody in their family they got to take care of. That person shouldn't be forced to choose between their cancer treatment and going to work. I mean, that's ridiculous. But so there, but yeah, maybe there are some people on Medicaid who you want to try to encourage work. Fine, there are ways you can provide those incentives, but without it being as cruel and as hastily written as this big bill. So
I mean, and that's the thing. I know you got to go in a minute or two. I'll
yeah,
just, I mean, you know, that I guess that's what's so, in the end is frustrating is that there are individual parts of this bill, like that one I brought up about the space stations, that are ridiculous. And Republicans are so good at that. I remember midnight basketball, and we
yeah,
shouldn't have just been talking about Medicaid cuts. We should have been talking about the specifics, right? What's hurting Republicans right now, and we haven't gotten into this, even though I thought we would. Maybe we'll tomorrow on the Substack show about the Epstein stuff and some of that, is that they've built this whole thing around they're going to protect kids, right? The
mm,
anti-trans stuff they do is kids getting operations is horrible. The anti-abortion stuff is they're killing babies. It's always they're protecting children. And so maybe when you talk about Medicaid, talk about the fact that they're going to take it. They're going to take it away. They've lowered the age now, so it was if you didn't have to work if you had a child below 18, they lowered it to 7.
right.
What I don't understand. So is your 6-year-old staying home alone? I mean, what or 7-year-old or 8-year-old? Like, so is there an 8-year-old that you feel comfortable leaving at home alone to go in and work? I mean, that is fucking absurd.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the Democrats couldn't even counter by bringing it up and making it like at least like 14 or 15. I mean, who's leaving a 9-year-old home alone?
Right. The people
Like
who are
literally, it's
seeing
like
their
the movie
houses
Home
burned down.
Alone. Your kid ends up in Chicago or something. Like, it's insane, and we
Or
didn't.
the kid burns down your house and
Right,
then you can't get through to FEMA because, well, nobody works there anymore.
right. We didn't focus on those, and we never do enough. And it's just, I mean, so again, like I don't know, I'm all over the place here. I did want to talk also about. So I'll give you 1 minute, David,
All right.
which is the title of this whole thing. And I was going to talk about is the fact that wow, whoa, boy, is it quite obvious that Putin has declared war on Trump. I predicted this 2 weeks ago. I don't care. I'm taking credit because nobody in corporate media would talk about it. Even people on our side were like, oh, that's a conspiracy. I'm like, connect the dots. He was pissed at him about Iran, about the bombing. He told them not to do it. Trump did it. The Home Office at the Kremlin got pissed and they started using disinformation against Trump, attacking Trump, undermining Trump, making him look weak. But now it's going even further, as you can tell, because Trump has gotten angry. And I think that's only exacerbated everything. So Trump's starting to talk about helping Ukraine. And they're like, what? And so now look at all of the MAGA influencers who are going after Trump.
Yes.
Most of them, their exceptions, are the most Russia connected. A few of them we even know, literally, Benny Johnson, whatever, were paid by Russia. Like,
Right. Like $500,000 a month. No, absolutely. And I think you do deserve credit for pointing out where Putin and Trump were headed a couple weeks ago. And I would add one other aspect to sort of the Putin Trump fight. And that is, you remember there was the Ukraine drone attack on Russia's Air Force a couple weeks ago. And reportedly, the Kremlin and Putin were infuriated
yes,
that the Trump administration didn't tip them off to that. How could the Trump administration not know? Was it because of incompetence? Was it because Trump wouldn't tell him? So that was yet another example of Putin being angry at Trump. And,
no,
so their
that's
intention,
essential. And I'm so glad you said it because I forgot. And that is essential to this too. Is they're like, you had one job, Trump.
right,
They put him in. The only thing they changed in the 2016 Republican platform is not supporting Ukraine anymore. Trump was there to deliver Ukraine because, in Putin's eyes, they've been emasculated and weakened because Ukraine was theirs during the Tsar years. It was there
yeah,
during the USSR. It's supposed to belong to them. And so the fact that Trump, A, didn't deliver on it and they were embarrassed and can't take the country over, B, kept funding them because a lot of Congress and others kept making him, even though more recently he was finding ways to try to divert it. But then on top of all of that, I mean, that drone strike, genius, in trucks, heading towards, I mean, I think it made it 2,000 miles or something crazy into Russia. I mean, that is embarrassing.
yeah,
And there is an anti-Semitic element to all of this too. We haven't discussed that yet. The Russians are experts at this. I've talked
Yeah.
to some people before here about how I believe, in Palestinian rights. I don't want kids being bombed, but a lot of that narrative initially against Israel, literally the day after of that horrible Hamas attack, was anti-Semitic and was attacking them. It had nothing yet to do about how the war was carried out. They've done the same thing with how they treated Zelensky in Ukraine,
Yeah.
Jewish, and tried to make it about that. And now you've got Jeffrey Epstein,
Yeah.
who has a Jewish name, and they're pushing that. There's an absolute strain of, and you're going to see this cleave in the Republican Party. The anti-Semitic far right is coming out to play again.
Yeah.
The Jewish laser right, we could call it. And it's going to be
Yeah.
very interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
We're saying you're too close to Bibi, which, by the way, I agree on that. He is, because Bibi is a criminal. Different from saying people had no right to defend themselves after they were tortured and raped. How Bibi chose to react in many ways, how he's continued to react, is the lawless asshole he is. But separate that from the other thing. But they're going to go after him for Bibi, Epstein, and Zelensky.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a
Hey,
lot of anti-Semitism, so we should be prepared for it.
Cliff, before I go, I got to say, I was expecting that when you came back from Italy, you'd have like the really heavy jowls and be a little bit wider with all that great pasta. You were pretty disciplined over there.
Thank
Good
you. So you're
job,
saying
my
I got a
friend.
little bit fat, but not too fat.
Well,
Um,
welcome back, Cliff. We're so glad to have
I'll
you
say in
back.
2 seconds,
Trust
the
me,
key
there'll be a lot of us who will follow you to Italy, France, Spain, wherever you want to go. We're right there with you.
How about Cliff's Edge and Blue Amp from Rome, and we'll
Sounds
do
good.
it from there.
Sign me up.
I'll tell people the only key to the jowls and all that is the beauty of Europe. Also, they build cities so you can walk around them,
Yeah. Go
and
figure.
25,000 to 30,000 steps a day will help. We walked everywhere. So, in any case, thank you, David. You're
Thanks,
awesome.
Cliff. Appreciate it. We'll
We'll
talk to you
we'll be
soon.
on tomorrow. Okay, you can go ahead, and I'll just let folks know. But David and I will be on tomorrow, 2 p.m. With our Substack show. We've got a couple folks we're talking to. We know at least two of them are coming on. I want it because of my trip abroad to have some international elements to it that I think will make it interesting. We should have a live commentator coming in from Israel. And by the way, just so you all know, he has a very fair view. He is somebody who has been vociferously criticized the Bibi Netanyahu government. He was the former head of the AP in the Middle East and in Africa. He's Dan Perry, brilliant guy, and a few other folks. We had one or two even like political candidates coming on. I've got some playful ideas, and because it was hard for me to plan this one because I just got back. And so Sheldon Hughes, thank you for the gift memberships. I'm sorry, guys, we're in such heated talk. I meant to look at the what you all were saying in here and respond to comments more. What do you got for me? I've got till about 5 more minutes. What do we got? What do we got? Racist pedophile, convicted felon, insurrectionist Trump by Tyler Durden. Great name and great point. What else we got? Sheldon, of course. I'm going back through, seeing the gift. Thank you. Because Cindy, they were all on travel visas for the World Cup. So we've got something about the World Cup here. I wish people would unless this country has destroyed the Republican Party in the 2026 midterms, I'm going to be advocating for people to boycott the World Cup as Olympics were boycotted against the USSR back in the day. Don't come here. As I advise Canadians whenever and say, you're killing Florida's economy. Canadians are a huge part of that. And they're down 15, 20%. Don't go to the alligator Alcatraz place. DeSantis is as cruel and corrupt little fat toady as Donald Trump is. Don't support him. Don't go to his state. Don't do it. It's gonna be very hard for me because one of the places I hate all Florida, and no offense to any of you who live there. There are reasons. Honestly, I live in Ohio, and I'm growing to actually hate Ohio. So I'm being objective here. I love Cincinnati. City I live in is liberal and creative and smart. It's the greater state that we're stuck in, and the morons in the mountains to the east of here and the farmland to the west that is a problem, and out in the exurbs. But when it comes to Florida, I love Key West because Key West is in no way Floridian. It's closer to Cuba than it is to Miami. You get down there, you hear the steel drums. You have all sorts of Cuban, Jamaican, all sorts of interesting different food, like a big trans community, and like they've got all sorts of awesome shows there. And like it just is so. They had a sign up when DeSantis said that people couldn't force masks during COVID. They just signed up basically saying "F you, DeSantis." There's a mask mandate here. So I love Key West so much. So I'm torn because I don't want to give money to that guy's state, but they're good people. who have proven that they've stood up against DeSantis. But don't come to America for the World Cup. We don't deserve it. It shouldn't be here the way it shouldn't be in a place like China, and the way it shouldn't have been. Where the hell was it? In Qatar. All right. What else do we got? The stunt that Trump pulled at the World Cup. Yeah, you mean the Club World Cup that we had, Lefty Gramps. Yes, of course it was an embarrassment. But did you see the picture they took when they held the trophy? Beautiful. I may do a video on that. They literally edged him out, so you have to like see his little head. And Trump never has a little head. He's got a big pumpkin head, but they blocked so much you can barely see his face. And there's no doubt that was on purpose. At one point, they actually asked him, like, what are you doing up on the stage? So Trump was humiliated yet again, as he always will be. Trying to go up through the comments, see what else I missed. I apologize. I know there's some folks here, that wanted to ask things. I see, where's this? Tails Molasses, Gen X parenting raising their hands. That was probably when I was saying something about the 8-year-olds being left alone and all that stuff. Well, yeah. And there were times, by the way, both of my parents worked. We lived in rent control in New York City, which we wouldn't have been able to afford it. We were a middle-class family. I'm not claiming we were at poverty, but middle-class family probably. And, yeah, there were times when I was a kid, but I don't think 8, 11 or 12 where I was left alone, that kind of thing. I mean, I think, if you have to do that, you do that. That was a very Gen X thing when both parents were working, but not 8 or 7. I mean, particularly in certain more, in certain higher crime communities, in certain communities where you've got food deserts where kids can't even, they maybe don't be able to feed themselves. I mean, this is madness. And again, that's like the thing. You see them taking Medicaid away from people if they want to not leave their 7-year-old home alone. And then you go to Italy and you're like, oh, right. You get almost a year off right away when you have a child. Heartbreaking. Let's put up the Substacks. As I said, guys, it may be less than on there. 23 more till we hit 1,000, and they give us the cooler check. And what that means is there's only an algorithm on Substack for the notes section online. There isn't otherwise, which I love. But they will show our stuff more often once we hit that number. And I've told you guys before, we have a sound check fund. We have put 5 figures of money into it to start off by supporting. We're going to make the announcement. I've already kind of told people on Tony's show who one of the folks was, but I'm not going to say it again. We're going to make a big announcement of a number of folks we're giving grants to, and we're going to promote because we have 500 something thousand subscribers, unpaid subscribers, and we want to make sure. So this money goes to a good cause. Some of it will go to paying people like David Schuster so he can do more. Some of it will go to giving grants so we can create an ecosystem of independent creators to rival the right. This is all good stuff and all stuff we need. So honestly, 23 more people. Be one of those folks who goes and becomes a paid subscriber. I'm going to go talk to my lovely and awesome Patreon folks. Thank you for supporting us there. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm going to look at the economics of it. You will either get a massive discount. I don't know if we can say, hey, you can join as a subscriber for free, but we may be able to cover 70 or 80% of it. And if that were worth it to you to be able to join, for whatever it ends up being, if I give most of it off and you're able to join for like $1 a month or something like that, I would hope that a lot of you folks might be interested in that. Maybe $2 a month. I don't remember. I'd have to go look at what that ended up looking like. But I'd like to get as many people there as possible while also bringing, we're trying to put up a lot of the content we do there at Patreon. Certain videos I've done lately. I've got one I did and put in a Substack that will be coming for you there. I feel, I can't help it. I feel terrible about, with Patreon folks, like I'm supposed to be getting you 2 videos a week. I'm not doing it. Things got crazy and hectic. Kid was graduating from school. There was this trip to Italy. There was other stuff. There were folks in town, but that's all over now. So I have no more excuses. You'll be getting hopefully everything I promised you. And I'm going to reach out to all of you, all my paid Patreon members individually to thank you, to offer you this huge discount. I'm going to probably email you all. So look for that. It's about 200 plus of you. So it'll be some emails, but I'll reach out to you individually and let you know about the program over at Substack. See if you'll join if we pay the vast majority of it because you've earned it and for what your support at Substack at Patreon. And hopefully we can kind of kind of grow that too. Because in the end, hell, Cynthia's like, I'm a Patreon member, but I never check it. Well, I appreciate that. I think most Patreon members just do it to support me, but I also like to think of myself as an honest person. And I tell you, you're going to get something, you should get it. You have gotten all the posts I've promised you. We've had a lot of good memes up there. We've had a bunch of our videos we've put up there, only there in Substack before everywhere else. So you've gotten access to them earlier than most people. You've gotten access to certain posts that other people have gotten. Like I've done all that stuff. What I've not done is given you the 2 videos I owe you a week, and that I apologize for. Um, but I think that's it. I've got a kid I have to go get and take to singing lessons. He's going to be a rock star, guys. Um, and I don't, no pressure if you're watching this kid. I love him to death, and he's an awesome singer, and I want to support that in any way I can. So who's coming with me? Come on. As I've said before, you know how this works. Don't make me get out the Jeremy Maguire goldfish. And I even Lefty Gramps with a $5 welcome back. Thank you, my friend. That $5 in Sicily would have bought like 2/3 of a meal. But no, seriously, thank you. Now that I've gotten all good at like this sort of sharing screens, I didn't look up the clip yet, but I may have to do it in the future. The who's coming with me. I'm also going to look into seeing if I can add another one of these a day soon. We're not quite there yet, but now that we're getting to that 1,000 subscription point, we're really taking off on Substack. I may be able to go back to doing 2 of these a week here. Hopefully soon enough. Not quite ready yet. As long as I keep them shorter to like an hour and 15, like I'm doing right now. So Sheldon Hughes gifted a membership. Kathy Mosher is a new member, and Lefty Gramps $5. All right. So I'm not going to do that. We need 10, but how about 2 more? Come on, guys. Don't make me take the goldfish. Make me leave on a good. Sheldon Hughes, of course, with $5, and you missed me. Thank you for missing me. Sheldon, Lefty Gramps, you guys, I'll be reaching out to you, even though you're at Substack. I'll be reaching out to you via email too. If you're still at Patreon or via Substack, sending you the email. I have your emails because you guys are going to get something special. I'm not sure what yet. Maybe invited to show up on a show if you want, because you've supported me so often. Same with Jim and Cynthia, who have supported this so strongly. Or maybe it'll be some merch as we're working on that, or maybe it'll be something else. Maybe we'll all do a Zoom together. We can share parts of it with people, but those who've really stepped up and made it so that we can do what we do, I have to show my appreciation with you. I haven't seen Michael McAndrews lately, man. He's awesome. I don't know where he went. Guy came in here, gave us $500 from one time. No, and a bunch of other times gave like 25 or 50 or, stuff like that. But I haven't seen him lately. We got to get Michael back here. I don't know if any of you have seen him, but he's fantastic, and he needs to know how much he's appreciated too. Look at you. You got me to 5. See, that's all that's what I was looking for. I've got Kathy Mosher, though, as a new member twice. That's strange. Interesting. Well, then I guess, guys, we only have 4. So who wants to do the last one? Oh, MJ sent me a Venmo. And when MJ says that she sent me a Venmo, I can always trust MJ. MJ, you're in that department too. And some of you other folks, when I email you, remind me that you've given what you've given before, that you've given some of these super chats, because the super chat folks are going to get their special gift. They will definitively, I'll tell you guys right away, I will pay for the super chat folks to, for your joining the Substack. You will get it for free because you've supported me, and we can maybe do a Zoom too. So I want to check that stuff out. And if you've already paid, hey, I can still find I can pay you back. It's not that tough. So we'll find a way that you are fully appreciated. But we have our 5 folks. This has been a great show. I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy your lives, guys. What I learned so much on this trip. I was going to do a second rant, but I got to go get my kid. So maybe we'll save a Putin rant for another day. But enjoy yourself. Listen, I hope from what I'm saying, I know that we're in a country where we have to do certain things. I'm saying don't be proud of yourself because of how much money you make or how hard you work. Be proud because you came up with a beautiful painting or a beautiful line for an article you wrote, or you figured out an equation that nobody else could, or you just went out and played it forward and held the door for somebody and made them smile, right? Like, be a good person. Be proud of the things you do in life, to be a good person, to be a creative person, to be an interesting person, because that's what they're all doing over there. we may still have to deal with this system, these brown shirts and this gargantuan fucking smelling worse than a garbage dump in August president, but we still can choose to be who we want to be. So choose to find a hobby if you have the time. I know not everybody does, but spend some quality time with friends. Like I can't tell you how much the thing in Italy, it angered me because of what we live like in this country, and it was so refreshing that people in other countries know to live. And again, like creeping fascism, the frog boiling metaphor. Like I can't tell you because I've been to Italy. This is my fifth time. I lived in France. This was even from a year ago when I went. This was much worse. What Trump has done over the last 6 months has just made the gulf grow that much more, so that we just it feels here depressing and anxious. Find something that makes you happy. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, I watch certain episodes of shows at night to relax, and it could be Schitt's Creek or it can be like Walking Dead. Variety of different genres, but they all make me happy. I love watching good screenwriting and stuff like that. Find the stuff that makes you happy and do it. And that's all. That's what we'll end this with. That's at least part of what I took away from my trip. Thank you for being here. Please, 2 p.m. tomorrow Eastern, we will be on Substack and Substack only. Tune in, subscribe to us there, blueamp.co. Subscribe to Cliffs_Edge on YouTube. We want to keep growing there, but blueamp.co for tomorrow. Join our Substack. Go see the paid benefits you'll get there, like a weekly chat with me and David and some other things, because I'm putting them up in my new newsletters. And that's all I got from the Queen City, this great radio city, folks. So, as the sun sets slowly in the west, my friends, I wish you a fond farewell.